Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I have a very interesting guest that I actually just met on LinkedIn, Mrs. Mary Shores. Uh, I've started watching Mary or seeing her around LinkedIn a couple of months ago and was just really intrigued with the content that she was creating and the types of things that she was discussing in her content. So, Mary, thank you so much for taking the time to participate in Receivables Roundtable.
It's my pleasure, Adam. It's such an honor to hear from you.
So, for everybody that, wasn't in the green room before we kind of started this, can you tell everybody a little bit about, kind of your background, who you are and where you came from?
Sure. Well, my name is Mary Shores, and I am definitely fit into that category of your old school, second generation debt collector. So my parents opened a collection agency in 1986. I was about 12, 13 at the time. So I had a weekend job of licking envelopes and stamps. That was my job, and anyone who's been in the industry long enough remembers all the old stories of the index cards and all the things that we used to have to do. And I think at around 91 my mom got a computer, but she didn't trust the computer, so I had to do all the work twice. I had to do it on the paper, and then I had to also do it in the computer. So that was fun. And then in 98, I opened my own agency, which is called Midstate Collections. I still have it today. But really, Adam, that's who I am on paper. But behind the curtain, I have to tell you that there was times throughout my career, my 22-year career, that I just wondered if the collection industry was congruent with who I was. And there was times when I would get really stressed over the daily, sometimes aggressive phone calls. And I thought that there had to be a better way. And one day I just looked at the phone and I said out loud, I want the next person who calls to be happier at the end of that call than they were at the beginning. And there is absolutely no way that I could have known on that day that it literally would be the day that would change the entire rest of my life. Because from that moment on, I ended up creating a strategy that it's revolutionary to the collection industry. And in addition to that, I have written a best-selling book called Conscious Communications. And now I am the creator of the Collection Advantage online training program, which is designed specifically to create and execute high converting collection scripting utilizing compassion and empathy.
So the scripting part is always something that's interesting to me, right? Because it's almost like a sales marketing hybrid as you're kind of preparing that type of material. And so, I know one of the things that we kind of talked about as we jumped on the phone today was this competing idea of compliance and performance and finding the balance between those two worlds. And I think that your kind of outlook on that type of material or your outlook on that subject was really interesting. So I'm going to ask that question again. What do you think is, and how do you help companies to find the balance between compliance and performance in the collection space?
Uh-huh. Well, I have to tell you that my number one passion is training. And the aspect that I want to bring to that training is compassion. And so while I cannot claim to be a compliance expert, what I have found is that through communication, that actually the way we've been taught to communicate is the opposite of what will work to create a connection with the consumer. And the reality is that now more than ever, there is a push for empathy. There's a push for more compassionate side of collections. And that can be at odds, or it can feel like it's at odds with also those performance goals. And so where is that balance? And to me, I'm always saying that it doesn't have to be an either or, that literally when we can learn to be maximize the compassion when we are speaking on the phone with the consumer, we will also maximize performance. So it is not that we even have to create a balance. We can actually raise the lever on both of these concepts at the same time. Because when we understand the neurology that goes behind decision making, and Adam, I've been in this industry a long time, but I have met people along the way that have been in it for decades and decades and decades, right? And there's sort of this paradigm shift that's been happening for quite a while, but COVID has been kind of like, the person who needed to go on a diet for a long time, but then they got the diabetes diagnosis, and now it's the diet's happening right now, right? So here's the thing though, I have felt this paradigm shift coming in the collection world for a long time. The need for us to bring humanity into this process of collections. And I think that initially the fear is that going to be at the cost of recoveries? And the reality is the opposite is true. We're only seeing that the more we can validate the consumers, the more that we can show the empathy, the more that we can let them know you are not alone. It is the more recoveries we're going to get. The fewer complaints we're going to get. We're going to have happier consumers, and we're going to have happier team members, and it just creates this synergy that all of it enhances the bottom line. But to do it in a humanitarian plus environment is so very important to me.
Well, I think there's always a challenge between looking at the compliance and the ever-changing rules and trying to stay on top of those things. As we look at, Reg F and some of the things that are coming down the pipe now, at least those that we know about at this point, how do you feel those kinds of like communication limits and those types of things are going to have an effect on the ability to maintain empathy in that communication?
So there's certain aspects of like new regulation that I get really excited about, because I feel like we don't have to have a tight grip on the old way of how we did things. It breeds into this paradigm shift of new opportunities that can enhance the power of the collector's voice, because the collector's voice is the most important aspect, in my opinion, and it's the least invested in. So any kind of technology or anything that gives the consumer a choice about how they want to communicate, I say that's really great. Now, we get nervous because how much new gray area is this going to create for us? And I feel like we need to be so rooted into our core strategies. And if we, like for example, my core strategy is really about this communication code that I've developed. And so how can I fit my strategy and still be compliant with these regulations, whatever they are? The CFPB has done a fascinating report on financial well-being in America. And the more that I dive into understanding that consumer experience, the more that we can learn that the people on the other side are not the enemy, that actually we need to be creating allies. And it's how do we utilize the tools at our disposal to create allies that are willing to create those connections versus creating conflict and ending up with enemies. And that all can be done with the power of that collector's voice. And it's as simple as knowing how to validate, activate, and integrate.
Well, that sounds like it's coming from a well thought out place. When I hear that list, it sounds like it's coming from a well thought out place. But let me ask you this. So for those that are, I think we can all pretty much agree with a positive interaction with the consumer tends to lead to more payments, better, higher payments, setting up payment plans, those kinds of things. So performance is, I think, has been tied to satisfaction in some level, and the consumer experience online and all of that. Those are additional tools that are being made available, especially as the consumer preferences change and people want to move online. And I think that you've brought up a lot of really interesting ideas today. So let me ask you let me ask it this way. How does a group who's watching this today, how do they move from this is an idea to an action plan, right? So how do we actually connect this? I've got this great idea, but now I've got all these remote collectors. Everybody's all over the world at this point. How do you start to move from an idea into an actual action plan in today's environment?
That's actually a really great question. I wrote the final chapter in my book is called I think it's called something like focus on the outcome, or it's creating this map to the future. And I know that the way that I do it is I might ask myself, what are 6 things that need to be true in order to create this outcome? And then I'll create a bullet pointed list of what those things need to be. And then I can take each one of those bullets and create an action item list out of it. And I like to create these 1-page action plans. I think that the first step in a question like that is getting absolute clarity on what you want. What do you want your brand promise to be for your company, and how can you create that? Will you need to have technology? Will you need to have training? What is going to be your niche? What is your sweet spot strategy that becomes the backbone of your entire company? And so for me, that's training. So what I really like to do is say, I want to invest as much professional development into my people as I possibly can. And starting at the very foundation of like understanding what are the feelings behind the phone calls, because when you can understand the neurology, and I love that you focus on performance levels, because we've been able to show that through voice analytics, which I think is an amazing tool, that we know how much more revenue is going to be brought in the more we can reduce certain words on the phone call. And these words are simple words like no, not, can't, won't, however, and unfortunately. I actually call this the do not say list. So one of the ways to get started is to understand, like, what are the triggers on the call and what are the things that make the call better. And when you start to understand that and you can train for it, then it's just a part of creating the practice, because there's so much power in the practice. When we do things repetitively, the brain is going to remember it. And that is how we can create change, like right at that foundational level with the collectors.
That is awesome. So I'm sure that many groups that are watching today, could really benefit from the product that you have out there. Your training program itself sounds like it's got a lot of really interesting aspects to it. So before we kind of wrap up today, can you tell everybody where and how to learn more about your program?
Sure. Well, my website is maryshores.com, and I have to tell you that my very favorite social media is LinkedIn. So if you're watching this today and you're kind of curious, please connect with me, Mary Shores, on LinkedIn, or check out the website. The program that I've developed is called the Collection Advantage. Here's the training manual that goes along with it. It's a really fun and interactive program that is all available online. And so the audience, or the students of the course, go through 5 milestones. It takes about 9 weeks, and they have 3 live coaching calls with me to tie it all together. And it's working so incredibly well. I think one of the things you said earlier was people are more likely to make a deal, if they're getting along with you on the call. And actually the science would support that. People are actually 6 times more likely to make a deal with you if they like you.
Wow, that's good information. I like that. I feel like I have learned a lot through our little chat here today, and I look forward to an opportunity to speak with you some more in the future. For those of you that are watching, if you have any additional questions, comments, feel free to leave them below, and I'm sure Mary and I will be responding to them quite quickly. If you have any additional guests that you'd like to see me interview, or topics that you'd like to see us cover, please feel free, again, to leave a comment below, send a direct message on LinkedIn or via email to either one of us, and we'd be happy to respond to you. But thank you again, Mary, for just taking the time to participate with me today. This was a great session. I really enjoyed learning from you.
Yeah, it was amazing to meet you, and I look forward to continuing.
Awesome. Well, hopefully I'll see you at the RMAI conference, which I think is the next one that comes up this year. If not, I'm sure I will catch you at one of the other ones, and we'll actually get to sit down and have a drink and chat.
Can't wait.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much. All right. Bye-bye.